The Supreme Court just stunned the country with a unanimous 9-0 decision. The legal foundation under the Second Amendment just shifted, and no one expected it to happen this quickly. The court issued a unanimous 9-0 ruling that is already reshaping how courts nationwide handle gun rights cases and government overreach. This wasn't a narrow opinion. It was a full legal reset, with consequences reaching every state and especially affecting ongoing fights over assault weapon bans, lawsuits targeting gun makers, and more. If you care about your constitutional rights, you need to understand what this ruling says and what it means going forward. In this video, we break it all down: what this 9-0 decision actually means and why it stands out, how it affects gun litigation and liability claims, the impact on future challenges to assault weapon bans, why the unanimous vote carries more weight than people realize, how state-level bans could now be legally vulnerable. Like this video and subscribe to stay informed in the fight for your rights. Chapter 1. A 9-0 ruling that shifts everything. This case started with a foreign government suing a U.S. gun maker, but the fallout goes far beyond that. In Smith & Wesson versus Mexico, the Supreme Court rejected the idea that gun companies can be held liable for crimes committed with their products outside the United States. The ruling was firm, direct, and unanimous, but the legal reasoning behind it could redefine the scope of Second Amendment protections and how courts treat lawsuits against the firearms industry. And it comes at a time when similar cases are moving through federal courts across the country. Key takeaways: the court ruled 9-0 in favor of U.S. gun manufacturers. It dismissed foreign lawsuits tied to crimes committed overseas. The opinion reinforces limits on civil liability for gun makers. This creates a precedent for future Second Amendment and liability cases. With this decision, the Supreme Court has told lower courts that using civil litigation to attack the firearms industry is no longer acceptable, and that ripple is already spreading to other legal battles. Chapter 2. The case that triggered the dominoes. The Mexican government filed a $10 billion lawsuit against several major American gun companies. They argued that these companies should be held responsible for violence in Mexico because their guns were trafficked illegally across the border. Many viewed this as an attempt to impose international gun control standards on U.S. manufacturers through the courts, but the Supreme Court rejected it unanimously. The language used is important. Key takeaways: Mexico claimed U.S. gun makers should be liable for cartel violence. The court said such lawsuits violate U.S. sovereignty and federal law. Justices stressed that misuse of a product doesn't create liability. They warned against using the courts to bypass the Constitution. The Supreme Court made it clear that allowing these lawsuits would invite endless foreign interference and weaken constitutional protections. That warning was loud and bipartisan. Chapter 3. The law behind the decision. At the center of the ruling is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. This federal statute shields gun manufacturers and sellers from being sued when their products are misused by others. The court confirmed that this law remains fully in force and that foreign governments cannot override it. This solidifies one of the strongest protections the firearms industry has ever had. Key takeaways: PLCAA was passed in 2005 to stop politically motivated lawsuits. It protects lawful gun makers from third-party misuse. The 9-0 ruling affirms PLCAA as constitutional and enforceable. Foreign lawsuits cannot bypass these federal protections. This ruling does more than just uphold PLCAA. It strengthens it, making it harder for activists or governments to dismantle gun rights through legal loopholes. Chapter 4. Why this unanimous vote matters. The 9-0 nature of this decision is not just symbolic. It shows that every justice, liberal, conservative, and moderate, agreed on the constitutional issues at stake. Even justices who typically support regulation and gun restrictions stood behind the Second Amendment and the limits of legal liability. That sends a strong signal to lower courts currently reviewing bans, restrictions, and lawsuits, and it makes future challenges to this precedent far less likely. Key takeaways: all 9 Supreme Court justices agreed with the ruling. This includes progressive justices like Sotomayor and Kagan. Unanimous decisions carry more legal weight and influence. Future courts are less likely to overturn a 9-0 precedent. In a time of deep political division, this rare unity shows that when it comes to constitutional boundaries, the court is willing to draw a firm line, and gun rights are part of that line. Chapter 5. Assault weapon bans could be next. Here's where the ripple effect becomes serious. Several state-level assault weapon bans, like those in Illinois, California, and New York, are already being challenged in federal court. This new ruling strengthens the argument that such laws are based on emotion, not history or constitutional tradition. It also gives momentum to plaintiffs who argue these bans violate both the Second and 14th Amendments. Key takeaways. The ruling emphasizes the importance of historical precedent. Bruin-style tests are now more likely to strike down bans. Courts must apply strict constitutional scrutiny to these laws. This decision indirectly supports legal efforts to overturn bans. The fight over so-called assault weapon laws was already underway, but with this 9-0 ruling, the legal winds may have shifted, and they're blowing hard against gun restrictions. Chapter 6. Pressure on state legislatures. This ruling doesn't just affect courtrooms, it also sends a clear message to state lawmakers who've been pushing anti-gun legislation. By reaffirming constitutional boundaries, the court has made it riskier for states to pass laws that go beyond federal protections. Legislators in states like California, New Jersey, and New York are now on notice. Future bills could be struck down faster than ever. Key takeaways. State gun control laws now face greater legal risk. Lawmakers are being warned to stay within constitutional limits. This ruling gives momentum to lawsuits against extreme legislation. The political cost of passing overreaching laws is now higher. The message is clear. If state governments ignore this decision or constitutional precedent, they may be inviting fast-track legal defeat. Chapter 7. Courts already responding. In the aftermath of the ruling, lower courts are beginning to shift their approach. Recent district court opinions have already cited the Supreme Court's language to question gun restrictions. Judges are now more openly examining whether current laws align with both Bruin and the new 9-0 precedent. This could mean faster reversals of unconstitutional laws and less delay for plaintiffs. Key takeaways. District and circuit courts are referencing the new decision. Some judges are pausing cases to await further guidance. Others are fast-tracking lawsuits based on the new precedent. Bruin and this 9-0 ruling are now working together in courtrooms. This isn't a one-time decision. It's a trigger. Across the country, courts are realigning with what the Supreme Court just made clear. The Constitution still matters. Chapter 8. Stronger shield for gun rights. Although the case wasn't directly about the Second Amendment, its ripple effects clearly reach that far. The court's decision reinforced the legal protections around the firearms industry, which in turn supports the infrastructure that enables lawful gun ownership. By shutting down liability theories that could be weaponized against the Second Amendment, the court has built stronger legal walls around it. This is a huge indirect win for the gun rights movement, and it's now part of national precedent. Key takeaways. The ruling closes off legal pathways for anti-gun litigation. It strengthens the ecosystem that supports Second Amendment rights. Gun rights now rest on a more solid legal foundation. Future lawsuits against firearms will face stronger constitutional resistance. In short, the court has quietly cemented new structural support around the Second Amendment. While not flashy, this move has the power to shape the outcome of future challenges before they even begin. Chapter 9. Targeting the legal tactics of activists. One of the most aggressive strategies used by anti-gun groups has been litigation, not to win cases, but to drain resources and weaken gun rights through the courts. They've filed suits against manufacturers, distributors, even advertisers, hoping to win by exhaustion. But this decision undermines that tactic by reminding courts that law, not emotion, must guide decisions. It draws a clear line between justice and activism. Key takeaways. The court shut down creative legal claims used against gun companies. Future activist lawsuits now risk quick dismissal. The ruling narrows how far civil liability can stretch in firearm cases. It emphasizes federal limits on judicial overreach. By making it harder to weaponize the courtroom, this ruling protects everyone who believes in fair legal standards and constitutional rights, not just large companies. Chapter 10. The case that changed the landscape. At first glance, this case seemed limited to a foreign lawsuit and manufacturer liability, but its impact is much deeper. It sets a binding precedent on what's allowed under federal law and the Constitution, closing loopholes that could have been exploited nationwide. The fact that this decision was 9-0 gives it massive weight and authority going forward. This is the kind of ruling that reshapes legal arguments for decades. Key takeaways. The outcome blocks global-style lawsuits against U.S. U.S. gun makers. It has nationwide reach because of Supreme Court authority. All federal and state courts must now follow this precedent. It closes critical legal loopholes that activists relied upon. This ruling didn't simply end one case, it changed how future cases can even be started, with the Constitution reaffirmed in legal clarity. This is a strategic victory with lasting force, a legal earthquake that will be felt for years. This 9-0 Supreme Court ruling did more than resolve a case. It realigned the legal battlefield by protecting manufacturers, restoring legal limits, and defending the foundation of the Second Amendment. The justices sent a clear message to courts and lawmakers alike. No matter how clever the argument or how passionate the advocacy, the Constitution sets the boundaries, and those boundaries cannot be crossed without consequence. This ruling isn't just a headline. It's a reset button in the legal war on gun rights. For gun owners, dealers, constitutional scholars, and every American who values liberty, this is a victory, but it is not the end. Every future fight over gun control, civil liability, or activist overreach will now be fought on this stronger ground. That's why your voice and your awareness matter more than ever. We break down court decisions, DOJ moves, and policy shifts that no one else explains clearly. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs the facts.